In today's brand new Formula 1 2017 career mode video, we move on to round 2 of the season, the Chinese Grand Prix at the Shanghai International Circuit. Let's do it. What's going on, guys? My name's Martinio and welcome back to Formula 1 2017 as we move on to round 2 of the season, the Chinese Grand Prix. Before we jump into the meat of the episode itself, as you can see on screen, we've got this guy Jonathan, who we met at the end of the last Grand Prix and who presented us with a couple of options to drive some classic cars. Basically, there was a pursuit challenge and an overtake challenge. Now, at the end of the last Grand Prix, when I finished it, it was about 2 in the morning, so I was absolutely knackered. So I didn't do the actual challenges then. Instead, I backed out of the option menu where you choose which one you wanted to do. I bolted the upgrades on the car that I wanted, and then I moved, and then I basically jumped out of the game and went to bed. When I came back, the first thing I was presented with was another meeting, the same meeting with Jonathan again, and then I did the challenges and moved on to the Chinese Grand Prix. And then nothing. So I looked at the R&D tree, and basically for some reason it didn't save any of the updates that I put onto the car via the research and development. So no updates on the car at all. So yeah, that's a little bit annoying because this was one of the races where I really would have liked to have at least one upgrade on the car, especially the engine, because with a kilometre long straight, and especially Sector 3 in China not really playing into our car strengths at all, it was going to be difficult to start off with, even with upgrades, but without them it's going to be even tougher. So that's why we don't have any upgrades on the car for this particular round. I have rectified it. I have put some upgrades on the car. We should have one in time for the next round in Bahrain, and then another couple for the Russian Grand Prix, which is the end of the first 4 flyaway rounds. But no upgrades today, unfortunately, despite what I said at the end of the last episode. But now all that's out of the way, let's jump into, like I said, the meat of the episode. We're going to start off by taking a look at how things went on in practice. And practice went very, very well indeed, as once again, like we did in Australia, we went purple through each of the 5 practice programs. The only one we missed was the team objectives one, which wanted us to run 2 separate car setups while doing the race strategy program. And honestly, I just didn't have time because FP1 was very wet, FP2 was dry, but FP3 was also wet again. And while it started to dry towards the back end, it didn't dry out quick enough. And through the first half of FP3, when I was going to be doing the race strategy program, I decided to wait it out because I didn't want to start fiddling around with setup and stuff like that. So I decided to wait it out. And by the time I did get the race strategy program done, I just honestly, it was a little bit drier, but I didn't have time to get out and do the whole program again, so that's the reason we missed that objective. Overall for practice, the pace was very, very good. We were finishing between 12th and 8th, which was a lot higher than I anticipated we were going to be finishing. Admittedly, that final sector with those, the very long straight and then the 2 further straights leading to the end of the lap, that's where we were getting let down. We were between 4 and 6 tenths of a second slower than the guys around us. But through sectors 1 and 2, very, very competitive, keeping pace with guys like, the Williams, the Renaults, the Toro Rossos, the Force Indias, and on occasion, a couple of occasions during practice, actually the Red Bulls as well. So it looks very, very good going forward. The qualifying objectives we have is to finish 16th or higher, and also to beat Fernando Alonso again, which we didn't do in the last race. But going into qualifying, one of the big things that was going to play a part in how we finished and where we placed for the race was the weather. Because as you can see, Q1 was a complete washout. We were on the full wet tyres throughout the duration of the first qualifying session, which meant we had a little bit of a decision to make where we went with setup early on. Do we maybe angle a little bit towards a wet setup and suffer in the race, or do we go the other way? I went the other way. I decided to risk qualifying to have a dry setup for the race, and honestly it didn't seem to make a difference though. We were running as high as 5th at one point during the session. By the end we'd fallen to 7th, but it was still good enough to put us into Q2 for the first time, and more importantly, we actually beat our teammate Fernando Alonso for the first time in qualifying. Moving on to Q2, and it was still wet out. It was starting to dry a little bit. The rain was, it wasn't as heavy. It was still a little bit of light rain around, so we were on the intermediate tyres throughout the duration of Q2. But again, the performance from the car was very, very good. The rain, of course, is the great equaliser, and it definitely masked the current holes in our performance package at the moment. As you can see, we finished the lap there in 3rd place, and we finished the session in 6th overall. So in addition to making our first appearance in Q2, we also get to make our first appearance in Q3. But by the time Q3 had come around, it had dried out sufficiently for everybody to put on the dry tyres and use them throughout the duration of the qualifying session. And it was inevitable where this is where we got found out a little bit. Without the rain there to mask the glaring holes in our current performance package, I think it was inevitable we were going to finish bottom of the pile in Q3. We didn't disappoint in that regard, with a 138.510 being a good 0.6 of a second down on Romain Grosjean in 9th place. But I'm fairly certain the majority, if not all of those 0.6 of a second, came through that final sector. So, very happy with qualifying. Nice to get into Q3. Under no illusions, though. The rain probably was the big factor in getting us to this point. But it gives us a good platform to go into the race and maybe pick up our first points of the season. But again, it's looking like being a dry race throughout, so it is going to be a tough one. The team aren't putting a lot of expectations on us for the race. They want us to finish 14th position or higher and beat our teammate Fernando Alonso along with 17th at the end of the weekend. The one I'm focusing on more is Fernando. If we can beat him, considering we're starting 6 places ahead of him, getting this driver rivalry out of the way, the first one, it'll be good for us. But overall, like I said, happy with the performance of the car. We haven't got any upgrades on there, so I have been a little bit surprised with how well we performed. But again, at the same time, I'm more suited to China. I really don't like Melbourne. The Chinese track suits me down to the ground, and it's always been a circuit that I've enjoyed. So I'm hoping we get our first points of the season here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go down to the track. We're going to take a look at the strategy options, and we're going to get the race underway. So here we go then, guys, on the grid for the Chinese Grand Prix, which is going to start in a few moments' time. And in terms of strategy, we've got 2 on offer here, one being a 1-stop and the other being a 2-stop. And there's not a huge difference there. It's about 6.5 seconds, just over, and I think that works out to roughly being maybe 0.2 of a second per lap over 28 laps. It's around there. I'm not saying it's exact, but if my math is wrong, then please mention in the comments how stupid I am, and I won't do any more maths. So yeah, not a huge difference, but given the tyre wear around here, and I think a lot of the tyre wear comes from, you know, turn 13, which is a very long corner leading onto that kilometre-long back straight. Turn 1 is a very long corner. There's a corner in the middle of the circuit where I think it's the middle of the lap, which is around turn 6. Very, very fast corner, very long. Could put a lot of wear through the tyres. So I'm going to go with a 2-stop because I'm not brilliant at managing tyre life, and if we were starting lower down, I probably would have gone for a 1-stop. But because we're in 10th. I want to have that extra tyre life to be able to fight against the guys around us and maybe, hopefully, either maintain position or maybe pick up a couple of positions over the course of the Grand Prix. So we're going to go with a 2-stop there. In terms of the fuel load, they've actually given me an extra 1.5 laps worth of fuel. So normally I'd only go with an extra lap, but I'm gonna trust in the judgment of the team for this one, so I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm not gonna do anything there. And as you can see, finally the session forecast at the top there, it's gonna stay dry throughout, unfortunately. A lot of the reason we're in 10th place is because of what happened in Q1 and Q2 with the wet conditions. But as you saw in Q3, maybe got found out a little bit there. We couldn't put it. I put my best lap in that I possibly could, but it just wasn't good enough to get any higher than 10th. So, yeah, we're in for a tough Grand Prix. I acknowledge that we probably won't get any points, but you never know. With a safety car here and there and some retirements ahead of us, maybe we could snag a point, maybe 2. I'm going to give it my best shot. We're going to see what happens, but yeah, there we go. So, here we go then. Chinese Grand Prix, round 2 of the season. Let's get it started. Here we go then, guys. 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights for the Chinese Grand Prix. And we're off. And the initial phase is pretty good, but the second phase is very, very good. We hook it up perfectly and we've got a sweep past Romain Grosjean, and up into 9th place as we move into turn 1. Make a little bit of contact with the Frenchman as we make it through there, and we just about hold on to the position, but coming into turn 2 we get really out of shape, as does Sergio Perez just ahead of us. That's going to give Grosjean the chance to retake the position from ourselves and also put him side by side with the Mexican of Perez. We of course have our own problems to deal with though, as we've got Nico Hülkenberg, as you can see in the top right hand corner there. He is making a challenge as we move down into turn 6. We're going to brake a little bit deeper, lock up both wheels, and we retain the position, just about squeeze him out on the outside. But pretty good starts to the Grand Prix, and we've retained 10th position there behind the squabbling pair of Grosjean and Perez. And you can just see through this next few corners, this is where the strength of the car lies. We get a lot closer to Romain Grosjean right now, and like I said, it's going to be important for us to maximise the performance through sectors 1 and 2, because Sector 3 certainly will not be our forte, so we're going to have to use sectors 1 and 2 to try and put a bit of space between us and the guys behind, or maybe even catch up a little bit and have a chance with DRS down this main straight. We're of course not going to get that this first lap though, but we're very, very close to the back of Romain Grosjean, so we're going to turn the engine up as we now come down past the DRS activation zone. As I said, we're not going to get it this time around, so any overtakes we do is going to be pure braking. We can't get side by side, we're still quite a way back, but we're going to have a big dive down the inside, just about keep it out of the back of the Williams and the Force India of Massa and Perez there, but we take the position and make it count, and we're now up into 9th position as we come to the back end or the end of lap number 1. But what we're going to do now is we are going to move ahead to the back end of lap number 4. As you can see, Romain Grosjean still not too far away from us, but we've managed to close up a little bit to the back of Felipe Massa, who has been getting a little bit slower now. He's on those soft tyres, which may be starting to be going off a little bit. They are the slower compound, but we're going to turn the engine up as we were within 1 second at the detection point. The DRS is going to snap open for us, and we're going to start to reel the Brazilian in down towards the turn 14 hairpin. We duck to the inside. We've still got a bit of work to do. We brake late, a little bit of a lock up on either side there, and we're going to run wide through the exit of the corner, but we just about hold on to the position. And as you're about to see on screen, it's a good job we got it done there, because as you can see, the safety car has been deployed as Nico Hülkenberg's race has come to a premature end. Unfortunately, I don't have a replay of it, so I'm not quite sure what happened. We just know that it is a mechanical issue. But we are going to jump ahead once again now. So this is towards the back end of lap number 6. As you can see, we are still under the safety car, but what we're going to do is we are actually going to duck into the pits. The team came across the radio and let us know of a viable change in strategy that they wanted us to consider. And it's not a massive change. We're still staying with a 2-stop strategy. It's just that we're going to come in a little bit earlier for our first stop, and instead of putting a brand new set of super soft tyres on, we're going to put a set of soft tyres on. So we're going to use them through the middle stint, so that when we get to the final stint on lighter fuel with our brand new super soft tyres, maybe we can pick up some positions. Maybe we can you know, stay or keep ourselves in the points if we are there when the pit stops do shake out at the end. So as you can see, not a brilliantly fast stop, but not really, it's not massively necessary to have a fast stop under the safety car. Of course, we're going to have to catch up to the back of the train once again, but we get the stop done and we're out. I think the only other guy around us that did make a pit stop so early was Sergio Perez, and he's gone from the soft tyres onto a set of brand new super soft tyres, and he's just ahead of us. But we're going to jump ahead once again now. So this is the back end of lap number 7. As you can see, the field is all stacked up and ready to go racing once again after what's been a fairly lengthy safety car period for what seemed like a very minor accident. But we get going once again. We don't make a brilliant start though, and we're struggling to get heat into the tyres. We're going to run wide through this final corner to start lap number 8, and as you can see, the gap between ourselves and Perez just ahead, who's now starting to get right onto the back of Marcus Ericsson in the Sauber, is going to be quite sizable. But as you can see, where the real strength in this car lies, definitely through the first 2 sectors and through these first 3 or 4 corners as well, because that gap is going to come right the way down, and it's going to be important to stay up behind Sergio Perez, because I believe he is one of the drivers that we're going to be racing towards the back end of this Grand Prix. So we're going to jump ahead once again now. This is the middle part of lap number 9. As you can see, Perez has jumped both of the Saubers, and one has actually jumped into the pits for their first pit stop. We're behind the Sauber of Marcus Ericsson, who is on a set of super soft tyres, I believe, and we're also going to get a very good run out of turn 13. Unfortunately, though we were close enough to get DRS. It has not yet been activated following that safety car period, and we've been a little bit too eager with the added fuel that we had, so we're not going to be able to turn the engine up at this point in the Grand Prix. So it's just going to be all down to braking, and we're going to have a big lunge down the inside into the turn 14 hairpin. We have a big lock up on the inside right. We're a little bit wide through the exit, but we get the job done and take the position, moving ourselves up to 17th place and just behind our teammate Fernando Alonso, who I believe at this point is still on a possible 2-stop strategy, but it could also be a 1-stop. So we're going to move ahead once more, as this is the the start of lap number 12. As you can see, the pit stops are starting to shake out. We've moved ourselves up into 11th place, and we've got Jolyon Palmer just ahead of us, who is on a set of soft tyres, and I think he's been on these tyres since the very start of the Grand Prix. We've also got Kimi Raikkonen, who has pitted from the actual lead of the Grand Prix. He is behind us. He's taken his one and only pit stop and put a set of mediums on. But you're just going to see just how much extra life we have in the tyres, because we're going to go right the way round the outside through turn number 8, get the inside line for turn 9 and 10. Maybe surprise Palmer a little bit. May have been a little bit of contact there on the front right hand side, but we get the job done, take the position and move ourselves up into 10th place behind Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez, who's just a little bit further up the road as well. But we're going to move ahead once again now. This is towards the middle part of the race and lap number 15. Because as you can see, we've got the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas in very, very close proximity, along with the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel, as it gets very, very overcast overhead as well. It left me wondering if maybe we weren't going to be a couple of specks of rain here or there that could potentially turn the race on its head. If you look to the top left corner, you can see we currently sit in second with the way the pit stops have shaken out at this point. We do still have another pit stop still to make, which will be coming around about lap 18, lap 19 as things stand. But you're also going to get a quick example now of just how far back we are in terms of performance with this Honda engine and how much work we have to do in order to get to anywhere close to the level of the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas, who's just passed us, or the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel. We're not racing them really, and we're not going to fight them very hard. We take a little bit of a wider line through turn 14 and 15, and we're going to let Sebastian Vettel go past and try and just minimise the amount of time that we lose. But we're going to jump ahead once again now. This is towards the back end of lap number 18. As you can see, the Red Bull of Danny Ricciardo has pulled right up to the back of us. He's been getting closer and closer as our soft tyres start to go off. He is of course on the medium tyres, as you can see there, so that means he's made his one and only pit stop, so he's not going to be pitting again. In all honesty, we're probably not racing against Ricciardo or the guy you've just seen in the back of the picture there, Lewis Hamilton, but we've got a little bit of team radio right now. So not a brilliant message to be getting, the fact that we're struggling now with a bit of engine wear, which is having an adverse effect on the engine's actual performance. I was expecting this stuff to happen, but not within a race and a half into the season. So it looks like we are going to have to start changing parts around and putting new parts onto the car in time for the Bahrain Grand Prix. But we're going to take another little jump forward now, because this is the start of the next lap, and we've got a bit more team radio. So no sooner has Ricciardo jumped past us, and then he starts experiencing his own engine problems. I don't think it was engine wear though, as we're about to see. We're coming down towards turn number 11, 12 and 13, and we're just going to see how much of a struggle he's having with that power unit. So as we come through this long winding right-hander, we've got the engine turned up a little bit. We get a decent run out of 13, but we're just going to waltz past him. So honestly, I'm thinking it was possibly the turbo, maybe even the gearbox that he's struggling with. But Lewis Hamilton is also going to have a go. He's going to sweep round the outside of both of us and have a look down into turn number 14. We're going to make it maybe a little bit more difficult on Hamilton than we perhaps should have done. This of course is our in-lap. We hold it round the outside and we keep hold of the position, but we are going to be ducking into the pits for our second and final pit stop and a brand new set of super soft tyres. We are of course doing manual pit stops, and I found myself over the course of the weekend getting more into these. I was struggling with them in Australia. I think you remember that we had a pit stop that where I basically just sat there for a good half a second, which really did compromise us. But I felt myself getting more and more used to these. It's still a bit of a shock to the system about how quickly these pit stops happen. especially when you get into the pit box. As soon as you're in there, you're having to pull the clutch and be ready to go. But a 2.5 second stop wasn't too bad. Still some improvements to make, but it gets us out in 12th position. And this was the situation I was looking to get into when I picked this two-stop strategy. Everybody ahead of us is on much older tyres and also much slower tyres. They're all on the medium, so we're going to be able to go and attack them and use that extra grip to hopefully pick up some positions. We're going to jump ahead once again though. This is the middle part of lap number 21, so a full-blown lap ahead of where we were after the pit stop. And as you can see, we're right up to the back of Esteban Ocon. We're going to do to him what we did to Jolyon Palmer a few laps earlier. We're going to go round the outside of turn 8 to get the inside line to turn 9 and 10, and we take the position, and it puts us right up behind the Toro Rosso of Danny Kvyat, again, who is also on the medium tyres and has been on them for quite a while. So we're definitely going to have a grip advantage coming through this corner. You're going to see it. It's got a lovely aerial shot here, just how much more grip we have and just how much more of a better run we're going to get out of that long turn 12 and 13. Don't quite have the guts to do it straight off the bat, but we're going to get DRS. We're going to duck back in, get a little bit of extra toe coming down towards the turn 14 hairpin, one of the favourite overtaking spots for myself. We're going to have a big dive down the inside. We get it slowed down, a little bit of a lock-up, but we get the job done, and that moves us back up into the points and 10th position. And if you look a little bit further up the road, also crucially, we've got Sergio Perez just ahead of us on some medium tyres. And as I said, he was one of the guys I said earlier in the Grand Prix that we were going to be racing. The gap is 2 seconds as we come across the line to start lap number 22. But we're going to jump ahead now to the start of lap number 23. And you can see just how much the gap's come down. A 2-second lead is pretty much just evaporated. We're going to have a little bit of a look round the outside into turns 2. But we don't get the job done, so we just form back in behind him through turns 3 and 4, and through this part of the lap itself, this sectors 1 and 2, this is where we were definitely going to find the most of our success through these traction zones, these slow exit corners. And we're going to have another little look now going into the entry of turn number 7. We don't have enough room, he shuts the door on us, so we're going to just again drop in behind him, and we're going to do to Perez what we did to his teammate Esteban Ocon a couple of laps earlier. We're going to hang it round the outside of turn number 8 to get the inside line for number 9 and make a little bit of contact on the front right there with the Mexican, but we get the position, run a little bit wide on exit, but we keep hold of it, and that moves us up into 9th place. But with 5 or 6 laps still to go, we've got Romain Grosjean just ahead of us, 8.5 seconds up the road, but more importantly, we've also got Danny Ricciardo, who is still struggling with those engine problems that we saw earlier in the Grand Prix. We're going to jump ahead once again now towards the middle part of lap number 27. As you can see, the car ahead of us is the Red Bull of Danny Ricciardo. He has been leapfrogged by Romain Grosjean, who's a further 4 seconds up the road, but that 8.5 second gap has come down to about half a second now, with about a lap and a half still to go. We come out of turn 13, we get a pretty good run out of there. We're going to turn the engine up. We are also going to get DRS, so we're going to start to reel the Australian in. His engine problems don't seem as pronounced as they did when they initially happened, but he's still got no defence for us. We're going to have a big dive down the inside into the turn 14 hairpin, and we're going to take the position and move ourselves up into 8th place. As you can see, Romain Grosjean still about 4 seconds up the road, as I mentioned. We are going to try and give it a good go to catch him, but at this point in the Grand Prix, after being pretty much on a qualifying hot lapping pace for the last 8 or 9 laps, the tyres are starting to go away from us a little bit, so we're going to jump ahead one more time now, and this is coming in to the final corner of the Grand Prix. Turn 16, we're going to take one last time. We weren't able to make an impression on Grosjean, but Ricciardo kept us honest, and we're going to cross the line in 8th place for our first points of the season.
Okay, good job, mate. Really well done. That was a fantastic drive.
Out onto the podium.
So there we have it then, guys. 8th place, our first points of the season on the board, and quite unexpected, to be honest. I really wasn't expecting to get any points on the board through the first 4 flyaway rounds. I thought we were really going to have a bit of a struggle on our hands to do that, but to get it in round 2 is very, very good. We were helped along the way a little bit with the rain in qualifying, helping us to get a pretty good starting point, and also Danny Ricciardo had some engine issues as well, which helped us leapfrog him into 8th place. But like I said, a very, very good Grand Prix, and even better considering we didn't have any engine upgrades for this Grand Prix like I was expecting. So very, very good. We've got our first points on the board, and what that means is basically we've jumped up to 12th place in the championship as things stand. Still early on, of course. There's still quite a few drivers that have that probably will be scoring points, so it's not job done yet, but it gives us a good platform to move on and potentially spring a few surprises here and there. I'm not sure if we can do it with a car this bad early on and get some points. Imagine what we can do with a good car. But looking at the top of the table, you've got Kimi Räikkönen leading the championship after winning the first 2 rounds of the season, and he's ahead of Vettel by 17 points, and Lewis Hamilton is a further 3 points further back. Looking at the constructors' standings, as you can see, we've moved ourselves up to 8th there, which is good. Our teammate still hasn't scored any points, but I'm sure he will. But we've jumped ahead of Renault and Sauber at this point, who have both had struggles through the opening 2 rounds. We've also got a nice little haul of resource points from the race there, an extra 500 points, which means, or an extra 109 points, sorry, which means we're going to have 500 points to spend before the Bahrain Grand Prix. And we've also got a nice little lead of 11-6 in the driver rivalry over our teammate. But the race wasn't without its problems, and if you remember around lap 18, we had that radio message come over that certain parts of the power unit were starting to show signs of wear. So I honestly wasn't expecting to get something like that, having to deal with that sort of stuff this early on. We're only 2 races in, and also and already we're getting problems with durability, so it's something we're going to have to look at, especially considering the internal combustion engine at the moment has got 56% wear after the first 2 Grand Prix. So we're probably going to have to change that and quite a few other parts, because they're sort of on the cusp where if we take them through practice and qualifying, then they're probably going to have the start going into the yellow for the race. So I'm probably going to change all 6 of those parts. I'll leave the gearbox, but I'll change all 6 of those parts and keep them probably for Monaco, where it's not so sensitive towards power and performance, if you get what I mean. So probably we'll have a whole host of new components on the car in time for the Bahrain Grand Prix. And we're also going to have a durability upgrade in time for the Bahrain Grand Prix as well, which is hopefully going to help and ease our problems with regards to durability. But that's the end of the episode, guys. So thank you everybody so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, you would like to see more Formula 1 2017 content from myself, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe as well. If you're new to my channel, make sure you leave a comment down below and say hello. Always nice to hear from you guys. But again, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace!